Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter. Thank you for tuning into our channel, Goldilocks Global Banking News. Everybody knows that Goldilocks is the number one source for the RV GCR. People from around the world tune in to see what Goldilocks is sharing on the RV GCR. Don't miss your chance and get your latest updates every day. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get your daily podcast from the Goldilocks articles on the RV GCR. Brought to you by Freedom Fighter. Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter, and welcome to Goldilocks Global Banking News. Folks, today, Goldilocks is sharing how the government shutdown is directly affecting the revaluation of currencies around the world. Just think, the largest, most powerful economy in the U.S. is shut down. What if it is a planned event connected to the global currency reset? Goldilocks is showing how it is directly connected. No accident. No coincidence. Not happenstance. And Goldilocks is sharing the details of how the U.S. government shutdown is affecting all currencies. So all the currencies that many of us hold, especially emerging market currencies, the U.S. government shutdown is just playing a small part of a bigger role. Let's jump right into what Goldilocks is sharing today about this. First, on January the 1st, 2026, Goldilocks is sharing, we will begin to see the effects of the U.S. government shutdown. It will show up in statistics of the market. What market? The global financial markets. Aren't currencies a part of the global financial markets? The market is expected to need to correct itself. So the market is expected to need to correction at this time due to lack of data during the shutdown. See, so the shutdown is causing a void, a major void. Think of a gap in the global markets. And this gap or this void will create a sense of lack. Because that's what a void or a gap does. But in order to fill that gap, think of a hole in the ground. There's a hole there. You got to fill it up with dirt to cover it. The currencies will fill the gap, fill the hole, patch up the effects of the U.S. government shutdown. Because so many markets, countries around the world do trade with the U.S., depend on the U.S. The government shutdown is affecting the whole entire world, and all currencies, of course, are a part of it. See, central banks which regulate the currencies that we hold, for example, the Central Bank of Iraq governs the dinar. The State Bank of Vietnam governs the Vietnamese dong, so forth and so on. Goldilocks is stating that state regulators, the bank regulators, now are shifting to restore stability to their central banks, which means restoring stability to their currencies. So restoring of the stability to the dinar, the dong, the bolivar, every currency. There are four major parts of this. What Goldilocks is showing is that the monetary policy, 1, direct intervention, 2, This is where the Fed and the government shutdown is affecting all currencies. Pay attention. The buying and the selling of assets or currencies. The Fed bought $700 billion worth of bonds in 2020. Emerging market central banks, they sell US dollars to stabilize their own currencies. Pause. Let me explain that. So, when you have emerging market central banks, Vietnam, Iraq, name them, any one of them, they are selling US dollars in the droves. So basically, they're dumping US dollars. They're cutting their losses in US dollars because the US dollar is getting weaker. So they're selling the US dollars so that they can stabilize. For example, Vietnam is selling US dollars so they can stabilize the dong. Iraq is selling off their billions and billions of US dollars so they can stabilize the Iraqi dinar. Every central bank, especially in the emerging markets, are all doing the same thing. It's a sell-off. They want to get rid of their US dollars. But this is the connection to the shutdown. The U.S. government, the Fed, bought $700 billion in U.S. bonds in 2020 to prepare for the sell-off of the U.S. dollar currency that's happening right now. You see how this is all planned out? Then we have regulation under Basel III, which secures capital such as gold, foreign currencies, and banks. This is where Goldilocks is saying where the global currency impact comes in, especially for emerging markets. See, U.S. rate hikes or risk offloads strengthen the dollar, but depreciating emerging market currencies. The Vietnamese dong is an export-driven economy, meaning they ship or export goods, products out of Vietnam into other countries more than they import products and services into Vietnam. So what this does is create higher demand for the Vietnamese dong. This is where they are dumping the US dollar in the droves and billions because they will depend on the Vietnamese dong more in their exports and imports and transactions. What does that do to the Vietnamese dong? Remember, supply and demand. The demand goes up, the rate goes up. Vietnam's export-driven economy and foreign direct investment reliance will begin to strengthen the Vietnamese dong even more. Folks, this is all done organically. And having this conversation with Goldilocks this morning, Goldilocks stated, it is a travesty how many people in dinar land have been told that all currencies will flip at one time, when Goldilocks and the rest of the international financial firms that move currencies are saying that is not how this happens. That is not how this works. And they see Goldilocks and the international firms actually see what's happening with the currencies months in advance. If you pay attention, what countries and currencies have Goldilocks been focusing to tell you about? If those currencies are not mentioned in a very specific or even broad sense by Goldilocks, I would encourage you to focus on what Goldilocks is sharing, because it will be or is a blueprint to your wealth in this investment. Goldilocks is only bringing you exactly what is truly insider information. Goldilocks is on the inside. Back to Vietnam and how they're affected by the government shutdown. Vietnam is expected to have what is called a managed float. Goldilocks shared this several weeks ago, where the IMF did a report, the Article 4 consultation, where they advised Vietnam they could begin their managed float. Because, folks, this is where you will see the movement in the Vietnamese dong. The US dollar is getting weaker, and Vietnam is taking advantage of it to their advantage by dumping US dollars in the droves, in the billions. Because of the US dollar getting weaker, and remember, currency revaluation is likely to be a priority of the second Trump administration, large in part due to the overvalued dollar and the trade deficit and the weakening of the dollar. Why do you think these countries are dumping the US dollar? Because as they see it getting weaker and they dump it and don't use it, the US dollar continues to get weaker. But as they continue to begin to use their own currencies, instead of the US weakening US dollar, their currencies get stronger. That is where the floats and the rates, the currency exchange rates of the currencies begin to move up. That is where we begin to go to the banks. So what Goldilocks is stating is that when an emerging central bank, what is an emerging central bank? An emerging market. An emerging markets central bank. When an emerging central bank sells US dollars, basically dump the US dollar, sell them off to stabilize their own currency, such as the dong, such as the dinar, or any other emerging market currencies. It raises the value of those own currencies of those countries. Vietnam, Iraq, Venezuela, you name it. Because it increases the demand for the dinar, the demand for the dong. I'm not saying the demand from you or I. The demand from the international firms that have trillions of dollars and they invest in these currencies and in these countries. The central banks sell their dollars and buy their own currencies. If there's a flip of anything, it's a flip from the US dollar to their own currencies. That's the flip of the switch internally. To flip from the US dollar to the dinar. Flip from the US dollar to the dong. Flip from the bolivar, the US dollar, to the bolivar. Flip from the US dollar to rupiah. Whatever currency you may think of. What is the effect? This action increases the supply of the US dollar in the market while decreasing the supply of other currencies. This also creates what Goldilocks considers as artificial demand for their own currencies. The result? The increased demand and decreased supply of a local currency drives its value up. You see how this organically works? What is the purpose? Folks, this is common strategy used to prevent a country's own currency from depreciating too quickly, which can happen during times of high inflation or economic instability. Many countries will be doing this, folks. Goldilocks has shown in writing the statistics, the indicators, everything. Countries will be doing this for the next 4 to 5 years gradually. And it will begin accelerating the beginning of 2026. This is where Goldilocks has shown from the actual sources in the global banking system that floats will happen and continue the raising of the value of currencies from 3 to 5 years in a 3 to 5 year time span. This is where exit strategies come in. To know when you want to exchange, at what rate that you're comfortable with, when you see it, and having a strategy in place with the actual firms, wealth management firms that are involved in the global currency reset. They are the ones who make the global currencies move up or down in rate. Why not have a relationship with them? You can click the link at the top of the description and join the Goldilocks QFS Dialogue Room. All the information is there. The relationships that many of our members have and they've expressed and shared, they're there for you to take advantage of. You're more than welcome to come into the room, hit the search bar, find the 8 steps. They're posted every single day in rotation. You don't have to look far. You can go into the playlist of Goldilocks Global Banking News, and you can see for yourself where members who already have their relationships, contracts to exchange their currency with the actual firms, and they share openly what they did and how they did it. All you got to do is repeat. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Don't add anything. Don't take anything out. Do exactly what others have done that we've shown them, and you do the same thing. It's all done with love, my beautiful people. Take advantage of it. Be well. Be kind. We love you. Ciao.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter. Thank you for tuning into our channel, Goldilocks Global Banking News. Everybody knows that Goldilocks is the #1 source for the RV GCR. People from around the world tune in to see what Goldilocks is sharing on the RV GCR. Don't miss your chance and get your latest updates every day. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get your daily podcast from the Goldilocks articles on the RV GCR. Brought to you by Freedom Fighter.